So, hello everyone, and welcome to Convo on the Shore, which is the unofficial Murakami video podcast. And today I have the very great pleasure to talk to Pierre Földes, who is the director of the upcoming animated feature film Blind Willow, Sleeping Women, that is based on Murakami's short stories and is coming to theaters this spring. So, Pierre, first of all, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me, and a warm welcome to you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So before we start talking about your film in more detail, could you please introduce yourself to the audience and take us through your story and tell us what led you to be not only the filmmaker that you are today? I think you're doing much more. So maybe you can introduce yourself.
Well, I was born in America actually, but my father was Hungarian, and he was an artist, a painter, and also a filmmaker.
Mhm.
And my mother was from England, and I was brought up in France. And I've always been, I wanted to do like my dad. I wanted to be a painter, basically, and I was always drawing. But then, a bit later, I started going into music also. So then I went, I went into classical music studies and piano. So all this at a advanced level. So I did this for many years, and at the same time I was acting on stage. So I was doing lots of stuff and still drawing, etc., etc.
Mhm.
But telling you about my life is not that interesting. Anyway, later I went back to America and I started working on film scores and series and lots of advertising and stuff like that. And then later I went to Budapest actually to sort of to relink with different origins of mine, you see, and actually went back to school there, to the Budapest Art Academy, and because I was starting to make animation also and drawing a lot more.
Mhm.
It was very satisfying, and little by little, to make a very long story, I'm not that young, so the story is pretty long.
Okay.
So anyway, little by little, I got in. I started making films, so both in live action and animation.
Mhm.
And then, someone in Paris saw my portfolio, my short films, and said, "Hey, this is great. What do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to adapt Murakami stories into a feature film." And so even if it was a bit sort of ambitious, like I did, a bit far fetched, but we just did what we needed to do,
Mhm.
and we got a very quick positive response.
Okay, so you had the approach to do a Murakami film because you like Murakami, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, like, of course, yes. I mean, I'd read Murakami for quite a few years. I'd read pretty much everything,
Mhm.
and I was just like anyone else. I just thought his world was fascinating. I thought his style was innovative, and his storytelling was amazing. I thought he was a fantastic artist.
Mhm.
Very inspiring to me, and so yeah, that's why years later when I decided to make a film from his work, I just was very inspired to do that, and I went directly to ask him if it was possible.
Okay, so could you tell us how this works? So you just contacted him and he said, okay, just go for it? Or did it take a long time to, get the rights from him? Or maybe you can give a little
Oh,
insight as far as you can, of course.
well, yeah, I mean the basic story is just, I mean, one way or another, yes, I contacted him, and I sent him my work, and what inspired me in his work, and what I was planning to do.
Mhm.
And then he told me that I could pick a story, short story, and I said, well, I'd like to actually pick a few instead of working on just one. The reason is I really like if you work on one story, I mean, or anything. I'm not saying just Murakami. I mean, if you work on one story or something going from the beginning to the end, the structure is there. I found it more interesting to take a combination of stories, and to get lost in it, in a sense, and a bit like you'd get lost in a maze, and then little by little to find my way and make these stories, in a sense, my own. I don't mean that I don't mean that I'm taking Mr. Murakami's stories and making them mine. I mean that I am appropriating something, what it inspires me, of course, and then after that, I think it's essential for an artist, not only to be respectful but to go further, because when I'm saying further, I think that's the way you respect the actual work of art. Because if you're just trying to do the same thing, you're not respecting it, you're copying it. If you're taking it and what it inspires you, and from there you create something new that's also inspired, then you are working in the same way as, for instance, Murakami work. He is inspired by something and he writes something. I'm inspired by his work, and I write a script and I make a film, and hopefully I inspire others to do whatever they like.
And we can't wait for it.
Live their lives.
Definitely. So, in your own opinion, what would you say? How much Pierre is in this film, and how much Murakami can we see in this film?
There's 100% Murakami and there's 100% Pierre.
Nice.
That's how it works. It's like when you make a baby. There's 100% the woman, there's 100% the man, and then from his parents or her parents and many generations before. That is exactly how I feel.
Yeah. Okay, so now I'm even more excited to watch the film. I'm not sure when it's coming out in Germany. I guess sometime in spring. But
I don't know, actually. I know that it's coming out in France on March 22nd.
Okay.
It's coming out in Holland, and I think in the end of March, and Belgium, Benelux, all that also end of March. In the US, in the US, April 14th. In England also, I think it's end of March.
Okay.
So I don't know. I don't know what's the situation if we yet have a German distributor. All I know is that the sales agent will be in Berlin now. I mean, the Berlin Festival is starting now, so I imagine they'll sell the film at that point.
Perfect. And you just told me at the beginning of the interview that you are traveling a lot these days because you're showing it at festivals. So how is the response so far?
It's really wonderful. I mean, one thing I've been to many festivals and I'm completely exhausted. I was, I was saying I was in New York last week and then directly in Toronto. And now I'm going to London, Dublin, Glasgow, Luxembourg, Brussels, and hopefully I'll manage to go to Japan. And I've just been invited to Sydney. We'll see. It's long flights, and I'm very tired, and I have other projects to start. So it's wonderful. You know what? One thing that's really wonderful is that gets the film exactly the way I was hoping they would get it. I mean, I didn't know, people were thinking, oh, this is a bit intellectual, adult movie, complicated storytelling, and et cetera. And then I see young people who've seen the film, and young journalists also who really very young journalists who came to approach me, to interview me. And I was very encouraged because they really get it and they understand. It's as though the younger generation, maybe for one thing, just because they're young and they're more flexible in a sense, but also maybe because they've been confronted in the last 10 years or 15 years to so many kind of images everywhere all the time, so many different kinds of storytelling, that they just take it as it is, and they completely understand it without questioning, let's say, more conventional, without having the need of a more conventional approach. I'll add also that the conventional approach was precisely something I was going against, because when I was writing the film, I just had really enough of trying to follow all these structures that they teach you in script writing methods. One part here, the second part like this, that part like this, epilogue, and all this drama construction, which is very nice. It makes you feel all kinds of things, but I didn't want that. I don't want to impose emotions on the audience. I want to inspire them something from inside. So it's a quite different approach. And the way I constructed my storytelling is in that direction.
I see. Okay, so it somehow also matches to the narration style of him, because I think he goes very unconventional ways, and that's what attracted you to read him more, right?
Also, yes. I mean, I mean, it's something I have naturally in myself. This need to I've done it before in my little short films. I like this little vignette approach, where you're telling a little part of something, and then you go and say another little part of something, and the audience can sort of make the link. These are precise moments I'm describing, taking you by the hand.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
I lost you one little moment there, but
yeah. It was freezing a bit, but it's I got everything. That's good. So does this also reflect in your animation style? Because when I was watching the trailer, it looked a little bit different, I must say. So it was not looking very conventional, very interesting animation style.
Yeah. So for the film, I invented actually a new technique of animation. When I say I invented a new technique of animation, so I call it live animation. It's it's more of a combining different things that of course exist. I'm not, there's nothing much you can invent in that field, but it's combining all kinds of techniques that at the end creates a specific style and a specific technique. I have to say that, as an artist, I can't really imagine doing anything without creating my own technique. Because if you want to have your own style, and it's just natural for an artist to have his own style, well, it goes hand in hand with creating a specific technique. So yes, first I had another technique in the very beginning of this project, but it wasn't. We couldn't do it in a large team. It was too complex. And then I developed this other technique, really for the needs of what I wanted to express in the film.
Okay, so could you explain a little bit of the technique? So have you been shooting with actors and then put an animation layer over it, or how can we imagine how this worked?
Okay, so I'll describe very quickly. I've described it many times before, and we're actually going to write about it. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty much I make a storyboard, so sort of by hand on paper actually, and then I do an animatic from that. So an animatic means you put the storyboard on the timeline, and you can add some voices and maybe some music or whatever, and you edit it, and pretty much you have the film there, but made with stills. In a sense, that's where I should have stopped the film, because it was all fine. I didn't need to do any more work. It was done quick. But no, you want to go further. So then this serves as basis, as a sort of guideline for shooting with actors. So I shot with actors in Montreal. Wonderful, we did beautiful casting, and just very good actors. And in studio, so just with very basic backgrounds. just to serve as a basis for the animation. So this is not motion capture, there's no. But then I had created the characters, I'd drawn the characters exactly how they were going to look, and I'd also created some 3D heads. So sculpted these 3D heads for all the main characters. I mean, there was really many 3D heads. These 3D heads are inexpressive 3D heads, so they can't move, they can't speak, they're just like this. Yeah, and then we edited the whole thing just like a normal live action film, and then we could start the animation process. And so for each shot, each animator had to do, they would have this reference video, and they could start drawing different poses. So it's not quite rotoscoping, it's sort of related. Some of it is close to rotoscoping. I just didn't want to follow every single thing that the actor was doing, so we did a more selective procedure where we take poses here and poses there, and then we'd animate the 3D heads on top of these poses in order for our character to be able to move his or her head a lot, because in 2D animation it's really tedious to animate a head moving in all directions, because you have all the volumes that are all the time moving, and then if you want to add on that all the expressions, it becomes impossible. It's not impossible, it just takes loads of time and many retakes, and then your whole production goes goes off track. So we animated this, and finally the animator starts reproducing what he or she sees and grabs from the expressions from the actors, and they adapt this to the character we are animating. And the main thing here is not just to reproduce. The main thing is to think, okay, I am creating this character, I'm giving my character life, and I'm seeing the emotions, expressriate that emotion for my actor. So it's not just copy paste. It's really, how am I going to express this particular emotion I have captured there? How am I going to recreate that for my character and give life to my animation?
I got it. How huge can we imagine the team that was working on these animations? So were you sitting in a studio, or what was it, a lot of remote work?
Yeah, unfortunately there was quite a lot of remote work, because it was during COVID. And not only that, it's because I didn't have the luxury of having just people around me. That would have been great, but when you're doing a production like this, it very quickly becomes kind of exploded, and for all kinds of production reasons. So yeah, a lot of it was remote. I had my main team around me in Paris, and then I went also a lot in Montreal, but that was not for the animation itself, but for the shoot and for a lot of post-production. And so there was a team in Paris, one in Angoulême, one in Valence, one in Arles. So that's all in France. And there was also a pretty big team in Luxembourg.
I see.
So I went a bit to different places. A lot of it was remote.
Okay, see. I have some fan questions for you, because I've been asking on social media for those who can't talk to you directly, but I've collected some questions, if that's fine for you. I will ask them right now. So I got one question. If you have read Murakami books already, which you did, of course, which one is your favorite?
Well, I can't really even remember. I remember there was one. I mean, I like all the short story, all his short story books very much. I think there's 4 or 5 of them. I'm not sure. I like very much the last one also. I think it's called Men Without Women, or
Men Without Women, and then first person singular.
The first story, I think, was very good, and that was inspired the Drive My Car years ago. But I mean, of course, my film is made from stories from the three volumes of short stories. There's After the Quake,
Yeah.
Elephant Vanishes, and Blind Willow, Sleeping Woman. So I took the title of one of the stories to keep it for the title of the film. I remember really also loving, one of the stories served as inspiration for one of his novels. It was called The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle.
Yeah.
And that I should read it again because I remember really loving it. And there was another one that was incredible, but I'm going to mix up the names. I'm sorry.
No problem. It's fine.
I just can't remember. No, I'm a bit. I'm doing too many things right now.
No problem. I can totally understand that. That's fine. Then I get another question. Are you planning to do more of his works?
I'd love to. At the same time, I think it would be a bit crazy. This was a big undertaking, and it actually took, a big chunk of my life. And like this, unfortunately, it takes a long time, and it's just a bit too much. A bit too long. Yeah. So right now, I'm not sure if I'm going to make it live action or animation or something combining both, but. I had an idea actually of another adaptation of Murakami's work, but I think it would be better for me if I went a little bit somewhere else, explored some other directions.
Okay, see.
Maybe in the same world in a sense, but yeah.
Okay. Then I got another question, which I'm not sure. I think we need to interpret the question. Will it be coming out in other formats?
Oh, I mean, you mean so like DVD or streaming? I imagine that's the question. So most likely, but I have no idea exactly.
Maybe he could also mean maybe like a stage play or like a musical piece. I'm not sure. It could be anything. The question is
we can answer it whichever way we like. It's ours now. The question is there. Yeah. So I mean, there was question. The screenplay, I won a prize a few years ago for the screenplay, and we were supposed to do, radio drama version of it here in France. It never happened because COVID happened, and then, but it's something I'd love to do, and I'll try and as soon as I have a moment, I'll try and push again for that idea to come back to life.
Beautiful. Then we got one last question. It is, how faithful have you been to the text in your animation?
Well, it's a bit what I was saying in the beginning. I was very faithful and very respectful. And then little by little, I started, just sort of taking it more inside and make it, make it more of my own. And then as links appeared between the stories, as I started creating characters that went from one story to another, then of course I needed to change things. And so little by little, I changed quite a lot of things. Nonetheless, there's loads of lines of dialogue that I of course kept, and then some I adapted, and some I had to write from scratch. But I think I always stayed somehow in the same world, at least the world that is my interpretation of Mr. Murakami's work. It's not. It's of course it's quite different from someone else's interpretation of Murakami's work. It's my interpretation, but all I can say is that I was really, when I was writing the dialogue, or adapting the dialogue, or taking the dialogue, I always was very, very 100% truthful to what I felt. And there was nothing. It was easy in a sense, because all I had to do was just listen to what I had inside and just say exactly that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we definitely can't wait to see it. I'm really stoked.
In Germany, I mean, I'm pretty sure it will, but I have no idea when.
Yeah.
And,
we'll keep an eye on it. As soon as it comes out, I will just walk into the cinema and
Thank you so much.
I have to thank you. Thank you very much for taking the time to answer some questions. And of course, it was a pleasure to me as well. All the best of strength to you. Hold on. I think you will make it very good. So
thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
You too. Have a nice day.
You too.
Thanks.